Princess Zarathis stood on the crystal balcony of the royal palace, watching the morning sun paint the sky in shades of purple and gold. Her father had summoned her to meet their newest guest, and she was curious about what the emperor considered important enough to interrupt her studies. The great doors to the throne room slid open with a soft hiss. Emperor Veltan sat on his massive throne, carved from a single piece of starstone that glowed with inner light. Before him stood a figure that made Zarathis pause in surprise. The human was nothing like what she expected. She had heard stories about humans, of course. Most aliens described them as strange creatures from a backwater planet called Earth. They were supposedly primitive, violent, and barely worthy of notice. Yet this human looked ordinary, almost disappointingly so. He was young, perhaps 25 Earth years, with brown hair that looked like he cut it himself. His clothes were simple and clean, but clearly not made from any advanced materials. No bio-enhancements glowed under his skin. No neural implants sparkled at his temples. He looked exactly like what the galaxy said humans were. Unremarkable. Daughter. The Emperor's voice echoed through the chamber. Meet Marcus Chen, an apprentice from the Terra Guild. He will serve as your cultural advisor on human matters. Marcus bowed deeply. The movement precise but not elegant, like a trained courtier would manage. When he straightened, his eyes briefly met hers before looking away respectfully. Your Highness, he said, his voice quiet and careful. His accent was strange, making some words sound harder than others. Zarathis had learned several galactic languages, but human speech patterns were new to her. An apprentice? She asked her father. What does he apprentice in? Cultural studies and diplomacy, Marcus answered before the Emperor could speak, then immediately looked embarrassed for interrupting. Forgive me, Your Majesty. I should have waited for permission to speak. Emperor Veltan waved dismissively. The Terra Guild sent him to help us understand human customs better. Trade with Earth has been complicated. Perhaps having someone who understands both cultures will help. Zarathis studied Marcus more carefully. He stood with his hands clasped behind his back, looking at the floor. Everything about his posture screamed humility and respect, yet something felt strange about it, like he was playing a role. What kind of cultural advice do you provide? She asked. Marcus looked up again, and for just a moment, she saw something sharp in his eyes before it disappeared behind a shy smile. Mostly simple things, Your Highness. How humans prefer to conduct business meetings. What foods we can eat safely. Why we have certain traditions. He paused. I also maintain artifacts and historical records. My people value their history. Even if it seems primitive to others, the word primitive came out with just a hint of something that wasn't quite sadness. Pride? Maybe? But that didn't make sense. Over the next few days, Zarathis found Marcus to be exactly what he claimed, a quiet, helpful apprentice who seemed grateful for any attention. He organized her collection of human artifacts with careful hands, explaining the purpose of each item in simple terms. This is called a compass, he said, holding up a small metal device. Humans used these to find direction before they had proper navigation systems. It seems very basic, Zarathis observed. Yes, Your Highness. My people had to start somewhere. Again, that strange note in his voice that didn't quite match his words. Marcus quickly learned the palace routines. He knew where to stand during formal dinners, when to speak and when to stay silent. He brought her tea exactly how she liked it, without being asked twice. The other servants accepted him easily. He was clearly beneath their notice. But Zarathis began to notice small things that didn't quite fit. During a trade meeting with merchants from the Rigel system, Marcus quietly suggested she examine Clause 15 of their contract more carefully. When she did, she found language that would have cost the Empire millions of credits. How did you notice that? She asked him later. Marcus looked embarrassed. I heard some merchants talking in the corridor, Your Highness. They mentioned something about hidden fees. I thought you should know. It was a reasonable explanation, but something about it felt rehearsed. Another time, she found him in the palace archives late at night, reading from a datapad. The text was in High Velnari, a language that took years to master. When he saw her, he quickly shut off the device. I was just practicing, Your Highness. I want to serve your family better. That was a military tactical manual, she said. Marcus went pale. Was it? I thought it was about palace protocols. My translation software must have made an error. He looked so genuinely confused that she almost believed him. Almost. The strangest incident happened during a formal dinner with visiting dignitaries. A maintenance drone malfunctioned near the head table, sparking and spinning wildly. The palace guards moved to contain it, but they were slow. Velnari reflexes were not built for quick responses. Zarathis saw Marcus's hand snap toward his belt with impossible speed, his whole body tensing like a predator about to strike. For just an instant, his mild expression became something else entirely. Cold, calculating, dangerous. Then the guards reached the drone, and Marcus relaxed, his hand moving away from his belt, as if nothing had happened. He went back to cutting his food with the same careful, unremarkable movements as before, but Zarathis had seen it. Whatever Marcus had been reaching for, he had expected to need it. And he had moved faster than any human should be able to move. That night, she lay awake thinking about her strange apprentice. Everything about him screamed harmless and simple. But those moments, the contract clause, the military manual, the lightning-fast reflexes, suggested something else entirely. Who was Marcus Chen? And why did she get the feeling that the answer was much more complicated than it appeared? As she finally drifted off to sleep, one thought kept echoing in her mind. For someone who claimed to be learning from others, Marcus seemed to know an awful lot about things an apprentice had no business understanding. 3 weeks after Marcus's arrival, Princess Zarathis was no closer to understanding her mysterious apprentice. If anything, he had become more puzzling with each passing day. During breakfast, she watched him pour her tea with the same careful movements as always. His hands never shook, never hesitated. Most servants took days to learn her preferences, but Marcus had memorized them immediately. Marcus, she said, testing him. What do you know about the Krex Dominion? He paused for just a moment before answering. They're a military empire from the Outer Rim, Your Highness, known for aggressive expansion and advanced warship technology. He set down the teapot gently. My people have had some contact with them. What kind of contact? Marcus's expression stayed neutral, but his knuckles went white as he gripped the teapot handle. Trade disputes, mostly. Nothing important. It was a lie. Zarathis was certain of it, though she couldn't say why. Something in his voice, maybe, or the way his shoulders tensed. That afternoon, disturbing news reached the palace. A Krex patrol fleet had gone missing near the Centauri trade routes. 20 warships, including 2 heavy cruisers, had simply vanished. The last transmission mentioned unidentified vessels of unknown origin. Emperor Veltan called an emergency council meeting. Zarathis attended, as was her right as heir. Marcus, as her cultural advisor, stood quietly in the back of the room. The Krex are blaming pirates, reported Admiral Kethvar, the Empire's chief military officer. But pirates don't destroy entire patrol fleets without leaving wreckage. Could it be a new weapon? Asked the Emperor. Possible, Your Majesty. But the survivors, those few who escaped in damaged ships, tell strange stories. They speak of human vessels engaging Krex dreadnoughts in single combat and winning. Ships that moved like fighters, but hit like battleships. Zarathis glanced back at Marcus. His face showed polite interest. Nothing more. But she noticed his breathing had changed. Slower. Deeper. Like someone forcing themselves to stay calm. Humans? The Emperor sounded skeptical. The Terra Guild claims their people are peaceful traders. Yes, Your Majesty. That's what makes these reports so unusual. After the meeting, Zarathis found Marcus organizing her personal library. He worked with quiet efficiency, but she could tell his mind was elsewhere. You were very interested in today's discussion, she said. Marcus looked up from a stack of data tablets. It's troubling news, Your Highness. War affects trade, And trade affects my people. Is that all? He met her eyes for a long moment. Something passed between them. A question, and an answer she couldn't quite understand. My people have a saying, Your Highness, he said finally. When Krek's ships go missing, wise neighbors pay attention. Why? Because the Kreks don't lose fights easily. That evening, encrypted messages flooded the palace communication systems. Reports from across the galaxy painted a disturbing picture. Krek's military installations were being hit by unknown attackers. Supply convoys disappeared without distress signals. Forward bases went silent overnight. The attacks were surgical, professional, and completely devastating. Whoever was doing this knew exactly how Krek's forces operated and how to counter their tactics. Emperor Velton doubled the palace guard and restricted all non-essential travel. When Zarathis asked why, he simply said the galaxy was becoming unpredictable. 2 days later, Krek's ambassadors arrived for an emergency diplomatic meeting. They were tall, scaled creatures with reptilian features and cold, intelligent eyes. Zarathis had met Krek's diplomats before. They were arrogant, but professional. These ambassadors were different. They seemed nervous, constantly checking the exits and speaking in quiet, urgent tones. During the formal dinner, Zarathis noticed something strange. Every time Marcus moved, reaching for water, adjusting his position, even just shifting his weight, the Krek's ambassadors' eyes snapped to him. They watched him like predators, watching a threat. But Marcus appeared completely unaware of their attention. He served tea, arranged documents, and performed his duties with the same humble efficiency as always. If he noticed the alien studying his every movement, he gave no sign of it. Ambassador Thekvor, the lead Krek's representative, finally spoke directly to Marcus during dessert. You are the human apprentice we have heard about, he said, his voice carrying the clicking undertones of his species. Yes, Your Excellency, Marcus replied with a respectful bow. What is your family name, apprentice? Marcus hesitated for just a fraction of a second. Chen, Your Excellency. Marcus Chen. The Krek's ambassador's eyes narrowed. He spoke quickly to his companions in their native language. Too quickly for the translation systems to keep up. Whatever he said made the other Kreks shift uncomfortably. Chen, Thekvor repeated slowly. An interesting name. Do you have family in the Outer Rim territories? I don't know, Your Excellency. My people don't keep detailed records of family connections. Another lie. Zarathis was certain now. Marcus was lying about something. And the Kreks knew it. After the ambassadors retired for the night, she found Marcus in the garden. He stood alone among the flowering vines, staring up at the stars with an expression she had never seen before. He looked sad, angry. It was hard to tell. They know you, she said. Marcus didn't turn around. I don't know what you mean. Your Highness. The Kreks. They recognize you somehow. For a long moment, he said nothing. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, older, wearier. The galaxy is smaller than people think, Your Highness. What kind of paths? Marcus turned to face her, and in the moonlight, she saw something new in his expression, something that made her take a step back without meaning to. The kind that leave marks, he said quietly. That night, security footage from the palace corridors showed something that shouldn't have been possible. Marcus moved through the building after midnight, avoiding guards and cameras with perfect precision. He knew exactly where every security sensor was placed, exactly when each patrol would pass through each corridor. He went to the communication center and sent a brief, encrypted message to somewhere beyond the palace systems. The message was too heavily coded for palace security to break, but its destination was clear: deep space, in the direction of human territories. When palace security reviewed the footage the next morning, they found something even more disturbing. Marcus's path through the palace showed knowledge that no apprentice should possess. He knew guard rotations that weren't written down anywhere. He avoided security measures that weren't listed in any manual. He moved through the most secure building in the Empire like he had built it himself. Princess Zarathis watched the footage with growing alarm. Her quiet, humble apprentice was not what he seemed. The question was, what was he really? And more importantly, what did the Kreks want with him so badly that they sent ambassadors across the galaxy to find him? The crisis came faster than anyone expected. Ambassador Thekvor demanded a private meeting with Emperor Veltan just 3 days after their arrival. Princess Zarathis was allowed to attend, but Marcus was specifically excluded from the room. The human must be surrendered to Krek's justice, Thekvor announced without ceremony. His scaled features were hard as stone. He is a wanted criminal responsible for acts of terrorism against the Dominion. Emperor Veltan's face showed careful neutrality. That is a serious accusation, Ambassador. What crimes do you claim he has committed? The destruction of 17 military installations, the deaths of over 3,000 Krek soldiers, the theft of classified military intelligence. Thekvor's voice grew colder with each word. Your apprentice is no simple cultural advisor, Emperor. He is a killer. Zarathis felt her blood turn to ice. Marcus? The quiet young man who brought her tea and organized her books? It seemed impossible. Do you have proof of these claims? The Emperor asked. Thekvor placed a data crystal on the table. Security footage from our bases, ship identification codes, witness testimony from survivors. He leaned forward. Your apprentice has been very busy in the Outer Rim. The Emperor studied the crystal but didn't activate it. Even if these claims were true, Marcus Chen is a diplomatic guest. I cannot simply hand him over without proper legal review. Then you choose war, Thekvor said flatly. The Dominion will not allow this terrorist to hide behind diplomatic immunity. Surrender him, or face the consequences. After the ambassadors left, Zarathis found her father staring out at the palace gardens with troubled eyes. You don't believe them, do you? She asked. I don't know what to believe, he said quietly. Marcus seems harmless enough. But the Kreks don't make accusations lightly. That evening, palace security was tripled. Guard patrols doubled. Additional sensors were activated throughout the building. Everyone could feel the tension building like pressure before a storm. Zarathis tried to act normally, but she couldn't stop watching Marcus. He went about his duties as usual. Quiet, respectful, unremarkable. If he knew about the Kreks' accusations, he gave no sign of it. But she noticed small changes. He moved differently now, like someone listening for sounds no one else could hear. His eyes scanned rooms more carefully, and twice, she caught him looking at her with an expression that seemed almost protective. The attack came at midnight. Zarathis woke to the sound of alarms echoing through the palace corridors. Emergency lights bathed everything in red. And she could hear shouting from the guard stations. She grabbed her robe and moved toward the door. It opened before she could reach it. Marcus stepped into her room, and Zarathis gasped. This wasn't the humble apprentice she knew. His entire bearing had changed. He moved like liquid shadow, and his mild eyes now blazed with cold intelligence. Your Highness, he said, his voice carrying an authority that made her spine straighten instinctively. Stay behind me. Don't look away, but don't interfere. What's happening? Kreks assassins. They're using advanced stealth technology to move through the palace. Marcus closed the door and activated the lock with movements that were too smooth, too practiced. They're here for me, but they'll kill anyone who gets in their way. How do you know? Marcus looked at her directly for the first time since his arrival. The humble mask was completely gone now, replaced by something that made her want to step backward. Because I've been waiting for them. The lights went out. In the darkness, Zarathis heard sounds she couldn't identify. Soft footsteps, electronic beeping, the whisper of advanced equipment. Then Marcus spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. 3 of them, coming down the main corridor. They think the darkness gives them an advantage. There was something almost amused in his tone. They're wrong. Marcus, what are you? Before he could answer, the door exploded inward. What happened next seemed impossible. Shapes moved through the doorway. Tall figures in advanced combat suits that bent light around them like water. Zarathis could barely see them, even when they were right in front of her. Marcus could see them perfectly. He moved with inhuman speed, his body flowing like a dancer but striking like lightning. From hidden places in his simple clothes, he produced weapons that hummed with energy and gleamed with unknown technology. The first assassin never had a chance. Marcus was behind him before the alien could raise his rifle, and something silver flashed in the darkness. The Krex dropped without a sound. The second assassin fired some kind of energy weapon that lit up the room like a star. The beam passed through empty air. Marcus was already moving, rolling under the shot and coming up with two curved blades in his hands. Zarathis had never seen anything so beautiful and terrifying. Marcus fought like violence was an art form, every movement precise and deadly. The assassin's advanced armor meant nothing. The alien's superior size and strength meant nothing. Marcus cut through him like he was made of paper. The third assassin tried to run. Marcus threw one of his blades with casual precision. It struck the fleeing figure between the shoulder blades, and the Krex crashed to the floor in a shower of sparks from his damaged equipment. Silence fell over the room. Marcus stood among the fallen assassins, breathing normally, not even sweating. He checked each body with professional efficiency, then turned to Zarathis. "Are you hurt, Your Highness?" She stared at him, unable to speak. This was the same person who had served her tea that morning? Who had apologized for interrupting her father during their first meeting? "Who are you?" she whispered. Marcus looked at the weapons in his hands, then at the dead assassins. His shoulders sagged slightly, and some of the humble apprentice returned to his expression. "Exactly what I said, Your Highness. An apprentice." He met her eyes, and she saw something like sadness there. "I'm still learning." "Learning what?" "How to protect the people I care about." Outside, palace guards were finally arriving. They found Princess Zarathis standing in her destroyed room next to 3 dead Krex assassins and a human apprentice who was calmly cleaning strange weapons with a piece of cloth. When they demanded an explanation, Marcus simply said the assassins had broken in, and he had defended the princess. The weapons? He had taken them from the dead aliens. It was a reasonable story. It might even have been believable, if not for one small detail that security footage later revealed. Marcus had killed all 3 assassins in less than 30 seconds. The entire fight, from the moment they entered the room to the moment the last one died, had taken half a minute. No apprentice could do that. No normal human could do that. So what was Marcus Chen really? And why had he spent weeks pretending to be something he clearly wasn't? As dawn broke over the palace, those questions burned in Princess Zarathis's mind. She had seen her humble apprentice become a lethal weapon, then transform back into the quiet young man who brought her tea. But she had also seen something else in his eyes during the fight, something that scared her more than the violence. Marcus hadn't been surprised by the attack. He had been ready for it, which meant he had known it was coming. The next morning brought uncomfortable questions that no one wanted to ask. Princess Zarathis sat in her father's private study, while palace security tried to explain how 3 Krex assassins had penetrated the most secure building in the Empire. Their answers made no sense. The intruders had used technology that shouldn't exist, moved through defenses that should have stopped them, and somehow known exactly where to find the princess's chambers. But none of that mattered as much as the central question. How had a simple apprentice killed them all? Marcus stood quietly in the corner, back to his usual humble posture. His clothes had been changed, his weapons were gone, and he looked exactly like the unremarkable young man who had arrived 3 weeks ago. If not for the dead bodies in the morgue, Zarathis might have thought she had imagined the whole thing. "The Krex ambassadors departed early this morning," Emperor Velton told her. "They claimed their security had been compromised, and they needed to report back to their superiors." "Do you believe that?" "I believe they're afraid," her father said quietly. "The question is, afraid of what?" Zarathis glanced at Marcus. He showed no reaction to being discussed, but she could feel his attention like a weight in the room. "Father, I need to speak with Marcus alone." The Emperor frowned. "Daughter, after last night, I think I'm safer with him than with anyone else." It was true, and they both knew it. Whatever Marcus really was, he had risked his life to protect her. That had to count for something. An hour later, Zarathis and Marcus stood alone in the palace garden. The morning sun painted everything in soft gold. But the peaceful setting felt wrong after the violence of the night before. "No more lies," she said. "I want the truth about who you are." Marcus was quiet for a long time, looking up at the sky like he was trying to decide something important. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, older, sadder. "Your Highness, what do you know about Earth? It's a small planet in the outer systems. Your people are traders and craftsmen. They're primitive compared to most galactic civilizations." And Marcus smiled, but there was no humor in it. "That's what we want people to think." "What do you mean?" "Earth isn't a peaceful trading world, Your Highness. It's a death world, one of the most dangerous planets in the galaxy." Marcus turned to face her. "And humans aren't primitive traders. We're the apex predators that survived it." Zarathis felt something cold settle in her stomach. "I don't understand." "Your people evolved on a garden world," Marcus explained. "Perfect climate, abundant food, few natural dangers. Most galactic species did. But Earth," he shook his head. "Earth tried to kill us every single day." He told her about humanity's true homeworld. A planet where the weather could destroy cities, where earthquakes split the ground open, where storms raged for months, where creatures with claws and teeth and venom evolved alongside humans, forcing them to become hunters or die. "We didn't just survive Earth," Marcus said quietly. "We conquered it. Every predator, every disease, every natural disaster. We found ways to fight them and win. It made us into something the galaxy has never seen before." "What kind of something?" Marcus looked directly at her, and Zarathis saw the truth in his eyes before he spoke it. "Living weapons." He explained how humans had spread across the galaxy not as peaceful traders, but as the most dangerous species ever to leave their homeworld. But they had learned to hide their true nature, to appear weak and harmless while they studied other civilizations. "The humans you've met, the diplomats and merchants and cultural advisors, they're real," Marcus said. "But they're also a mask we wear. Underneath, we're all predators." "All of you?" "Every human who leaves Earth goes through basic combat training that would qualify them as elite soldiers by galactic standards. We can't help it. It's how we're built." Marcus gestured at himself. "But some of us are trained for more than just survival. Like you. Like me." Marcus told her about the apex hunters, humanity's ultimate warriors, trained from childhood to be perfect killers. They were sent throughout the galaxy disguised as ordinary humans, gathering intelligence and protecting human interests. "How many of you are there?" Zarathis asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. "Enough," Marcus said simply. "And your mission here?" Marcus hesitated. "To determine whether the Velnari Empire could be trusted with the truth about humanity." The words hit her like a physical blow. "You've been evaluating us? Like test subjects?" "Like potential allies," Marcus corrected gently. "Your Highness, humanity is not interested in conquest. We're interested in finding civilizations that can handle knowing what we really are." "And if we fail your test?" Marcus's expression grew very serious. "Then we continue pretending to be harmless traders, and you never learn the truth." "What happens to civilizations that threaten humans?" Marcus was quiet for so long that Zarathis thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "They stop being threats." The implications of that statement made her head spin. How many galactic conflicts had human involvement? How many times had civilizations mysteriously lost wars they should have won? How many accidents and natural disasters had actually been human interventions? "The Kreks," she said suddenly. "The missing fleets, the destroyed bases, that was humans, wasn't it?" Marcus nodded. "The Kreks made the mistake of attacking human settlements. They thought we were easy targets." His smile was cold as winter. "They learned otherwise." "Ah, how many humans does it take to destroy a Krek's fleet?" "Depends on the fleet." "Marcus." He met her eyes. "Sometimes one." Zarathis sat down heavily on a garden bench, her mind reeling. Everything she thought she knew about the galaxy was wrong. Humans weren't primitive. They were the apex predators. They weren't weak. They were so strong, they had to pretend to be weak to avoid terrifying everyone else. "Why tell me this?" she asked. "Because your people passed the test," Marcus said softly. "In 3 weeks here, I've seen Velnari culture. You're honorable. You treat others with respect. You value life and art and knowledge." He paused. "You're the kind of people humanity wants as friends. And if we hadn't passed, then I would have finished my apprenticeship and left. You would have remembered me as a quiet young man who served tea and organized books." Marcus's expression grew sad. "You would never have known what you were really looking at." That afternoon, emergency transmissions reached the palace. The Krex Dominion was mobilizing their entire battle fleet and moving toward Velnari space. They claimed the Empire was harboring terrorists and demanded Marcus's immediate surrender. Emperor Velton called another emergency council. This time, Marcus attended not as a servant, but as himself. "The Krex fleet will arrive in 4 days," Admiral Kethvar reported. 300 ships, including 12 dreadnoughts. "Your Majesty, we cannot fight that force." The room fell silent. Everyone knew what that meant. The Empire would have to surrender Marcus to avoid annihilation. "Your Majesty," Marcus said quietly, "with your permission, I would like to send a message to my people." "Will they help us?" the Emperor asked. Marcus looked around the room at the faces of people he had come to care about over the past weeks. Then he smiled. Not the humble apprentice's smile, but something far more dangerous. "Your Majesty, help is already on the way." Outside the palace, hidden sensors detected the first human warships dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. But these weren't the simple trading vessels the galaxy knew about. These were the ships that had destroyed the Krex fleets, and they were coming to collect their apprentice. The Krex battle fleet arrived exactly when predicted. 300 warships, arranged in perfect attack formation around the Velnari homeworld. Admiral Thekvor's flagship broadcast a final ultimatum: surrender the human terrorist, or watch their civilization burn. Emperor Velton stood on the palace observation deck, watching death approach his people. The Velnari fleet was brave but small. Against the massive Krex armada, they would last perhaps an hour. "Your Majesty," Admiral Kethvar said quietly, "we should consider their terms." Before the Emperor could respond, space around the planet began to change. Ships appeared, not the slow emergence from hyperspace that most vessels used, but an instant materialization that defied everything the galaxy knew about physics. One moment empty space, the next moment filled with sleek, deadly shapes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Human ships, but not the simple trading vessels anyone had seen before. These were predators made of metal and energy, each one radiating menace like a living thing. They moved with impossible grace, taking positions around the Krex fleet with the patience of hunters surrounding prey. "By the void," Admiral Kethvar whispered. "How many are there?" The answer came from the palace communications officer. "Sir, our sensors show 57 vessels, but they're reading impossible energy signatures. Each ship appears to have firepower equivalent to a heavy dreadnought." On the observation deck, Princess Zarathis found Marcus standing alone, watching the ships arrange themselves. He looked different again. Not the humble apprentice or even the deadly warrior from the night before. There was something ancient in his posture, like someone who had seen this dance many times. "Are those your people?" she asked. "Some of them," Marcus replied. His voice carried a weight that made her shiver. A new transmission reached the palace, but it wasn't directed at the Emperor. It was addressed specifically to Marcus Chen, on a frequency that shouldn't have been accessible to anyone without human military authorization. "Permission to dock, Master Hunter." Marcus accepted without hesitation. An hour later, a single human vessel approached the palace landing platform. It was smaller than the warships, but moved with the same predatory grace. When it landed, only one person emerged. Zarathis had heard stories about legends, but she had never seen one in person. The woman who walked down the ship's ramp was tall, lean, and moved like controlled lightning. Her clothes were simple but somehow elegant, and her eyes held the kind of calm that came from being absolutely certain of one's capabilities. She looked young, perhaps 30 Earth years. But something about her presence suggested vast experience. Apex Hunter Prime, Elena Vasquez, Marcus said quietly as they watched her approach. The Nightmare of Andromeda. The one who ended the Zephyrian rebellion single-handedly. She's come for you? She's come to witness something. The formal meeting was held in the palace's great hall, with Emperor Veltan on his throne and the full court in attendance. Krex and Velnari officials watched nervously as Elena Vasquez entered with Marcus at her side. But something was wrong with the arrangement. Elena walked slightly behind Marcus, her posture showing clear deference. When they reached the center of the hall, she stopped and turned to face him. What happened next shattered everything Zarathis thought she understood. Elena Vasquez, the legendary Apex Hunter Prime, the warrior whose name was whispered in fear across the galaxy, dropped to one knee and bowed her head to Marcus. "Master Hunter," she said formally, her voice carrying through the silent hall. "Your final lesson is complete. The Velnari have proven themselves worthy of the truth." The hall erupted in shocked whispers. Zarathis felt the world tilt around her as the full implications hit home. Marcus wasn't an apprentice. He wasn't even an ordinary apex hunter. He was something beyond that. Something so far above even the legendary Elena Vasquez that she bowed to him like a student to a teacher. "Rise, Elena," Marcus said, his voice carrying an authority that made everyone in the hall straighten instinctively. "You honor me with your presence." "Honor me? You honor me with your presence." Elena stood, but her respectful posture remained. "Master Hunter Chen, the council sends their regards. Your evaluation has been accepted. The Velnari Empire is approved for full diplomatic contact." Marcus nodded gravely. "And the Krex?" "Handled." Elena's smile was sharp as a blade. Admiral HFY War received a detailed report on human military capabilities 20 minutes ago. His fleet is currently retreating at maximum speed. Outside the palace, confirmation came through long-range sensors. The massive Krex armada was indeed fleeing, their ships burning engines at dangerous levels to escape the system as quickly as possible. "What did you tell them?" Emperor Veltan asked, finding his voice at last. Elena looked at Marcus, who nodded permission. "We sent them tactical analysis from their previous encounters with human forces. Battle recordings. Casualty reports." She paused. "And a simple message. This system is under the protection of Master Hunter Marcus Chen. Approach at your own risk." "They ran from a message?" Admiral Kethvar asked incredulously. "They ran from a name," Elena corrected. "Master Hunter Chen has a reputation in certain circles." Zarathis stared at Marcus, this quiet young man who had served her tea and organized her books. "What kind of reputation?" Marcus looked embarrassed. "I may have been involved in a few military actions." "He ended the Rigel War in 6 hours, Elena said proudly. "Eliminated the Shadow Fleet at Proxima. Single-handedly prevented 3 different species from developing planet-killer weapons." She turned to Marcus with something like adoration. "The Krex know his name very well. They've been hunting him for 5 years without success. Because he was here," Zarathis realized, "pretending to be an apprentice. The perfect disguise," Elena agreed. "Who would look for the galaxy's most dangerous human among cultural advisors and tea servers?" The formal ceremonies took another hour. Marcus was acknowledged by the Velnari court in his true capacity. Treaties were proposed, and trade agreements began. Through it all, Elena Vasquez, the legend who could destroy fleets and topple governments, remained deferential to the quiet young man Zarathis had known as her apprentice. As evening fell, Zarathis found herself alone with Marcus in the garden, where he had first told her the truth about humanity. But even that truth had been incomplete. "Master Hunter," she said, testing the title. Marcus winced. "I preferred it when you called me Marcus. How many of you are there, Master Hunters?" 12, he said quietly. "In the entire galaxy. And Elena Vasquez bows to you. Elena is brilliant, young, but brilliant. She'll probably surpass me within a few years." Zarathis shook her head in amazement. "You spent 3 weeks bringing me tea." "I enjoyed bringing you tea," Marcus said seriously. I enjoyed organizing your books and listening to you talk about Velnari poetry. I enjoyed serving your family. He looked up at the stars. Do you know what the hardest part of being what I am is? Hiding it, remembering why it matters. Marcus turned to face her. Power without purpose is just destruction. Everything I can do, every skill I have, only matters if it protects something worth protecting. Like us? Like you. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. This man could level civilizations, command fleets, make entire species flee in terror. And he had chosen to use that power to serve T and evaluate whether her people deserved the truth. What happens now? She asked. Now humanity and the Velnari become allies, Marcus said. Real allies. Your people will learn about our true capabilities and will share technology and knowledge. The galaxy becomes a little bit safer for both our species. And you? Marcus smiled. The same humble, gentle smile she remembered from his first day in the palace. If you'll have me, I'd like to stay. There are still things I need to learn about your people, and, he added with mock seriousness, someone needs to make sure you get your tea the way you like it. Princess Zarathis looked at the man who had fooled an entire empire, who had made legends bow to him, who could reshape the galaxy with a gesture, and all she could think about was how he had remembered exactly how she liked her tea from the very first day. Yes, she said softly. I think I'd like that very much. Above them, human warships maintained their protective formation around the planet, silent guardians watching over the first true alliance between humanity and another species. And in the garden below, a master hunter who could destroy worlds, chose instead to tend to simple things, friendship, service, and the careful art of making perfect tea. The galaxy would never be the same. But for once, that might be a very good thing.